Hi, welcome to Letters from New Zealand. I am John Jarvis. This podcast is about New Zealand Maori use of fortifications and weapons, but an introduction is needed for perspective. Throughout history, weapons have developed and changed. Invention, movements towards the lands, urbanisation, local materials and a few accidents. The invention of the wheel allowed chariots and transportation. Iron sword and spearheads, bronze and shield provided protection. In isolated countries, such as New Zealand and Japan, shields were never carried by warriors, although protective covers were sometimes installed. Heavy infantry ruled supreme from Greek times up until the invention of the stirrup in China and India. Gunpowder heralded the development of firearms. Despite being inferior to the longbow that provided 4 times the range, 8 times the rate of fire, and better penetration. It was supply and demand. It takes up to 4 years to train a bowman, 4 weeks for a musketeer. The machine gun, cordite, high explosives, motor vehicles and aircraft need no explanation. In the mid-19th century, a military expert described North American Red Indian horsemen as the best light cavalry in the world. While far away, down under, another noted that the Maori defence systems, including the invention of trench warfare, the best in the world. Although some question the historicity of the trench warfare. Maori were essentially a Stone Age culture, albeit one with a highly developed cultural system. They had no throwing weapons. Dense bush and trees would have limited their effect, and no wood was available, for instance like yew, to provide single wood bows. The art of composite bows was superseded by firearms. Maori basically fought in open order, but their tactics readily adapted to musket fire without much change. Another factor was many of the punitive expeditions historically were about utu, or revenge, rather than expanding their lands and populations. They were also aware of unsustainable losses. Many strong pa were not attacked because of estimated casualties. Hence, defensive systems protecting vulnerable tribes, pa were ideally sited on volcanic hills that offered natural terraces that could be festooned with long, sharpened stakes. They employed multiple ramparts overlooking the lower. Trenches were used as hiding ports for ambushes. Other features included food storage, areas above and below the ground, water wells, ramparts and fighting stages. Many pa had underground escape passages. Where they differed from British forts were the addition of food storage pits and areas for growing crops. These resemble the sophisticated Byzantines, who extended their walls in Constantinople with a third wall allowing for gardens and crops to support up to a 3-year siege. Maori Pa, wherever possible, protected access to the sea for food and salt. Rocky outcrops and heavy seas were preferred to deter enemy attacks by canoe or whaka. Defending and attacking all changed with the introduction of the musket and cannon. I recall talking to a stonemason repairing a fortified gatehouse in England. He told me that the castle had been demolished during the Civil War. When I took the bait and asked why, he explained that the castle had been built over a good supply of water, then pointed towards an overlooking cliff half a mile away. Cannon would have made the castle a sitting duck. Fortunately for the Maori, at least initially, the British Army did not have field artillery in New Zealand and had to rely on ships' cannon. These did not have the large wheels, making movement slower, or the iron frames, using shell-type ends to plough into the earth and absorb recoil. They were also inferior in elevation and depression degrees. Nevertheless, cannon were winched onto barges, rowed ashore, and dug in to obtain correct trajectory. Mortars were practical, but had little effect on dug-in defenders. In one besieged pa, chiefs met to discuss why they were being used, and it was decided it was to keep them awake at night. During the day, young men and boys spotted landing shells, and if the spluttering fuse was too long, ran and pulled it out, allowing the gunpowder to augment local supplies. A nationwide ban on the sale of percussion caps had little effect. Maori simply took the eyelets out of boots and filled the hole with red phosphorus wax matchheads. Chiefs would watch their enemy closely and would evacuate the pa at night, leaving the British to storm a deserted fortification of no practical use to the British. Other pa were often available, and new ones could be weeks in building. Guerrilla war became the norm, but as the armed constabulary increased, the pa faded into history. Today, the remains of pa have archaeological protection, allowing digs that provided items and remnants of food used by the long-gone defenders. Thank you for watching. Please tick the subscribe thingy at the bottom and keep in good health.